Hey up, welcome to Grow Your Agency Live with me. I'm Andi Jarvis from Eximo Marketing. You can see that because it says it down on the screen. Where is it? There, somewhere like that. Thank you for coming along today. If you've signed up and you've got to the stream, apologies to anyone who got the email that had the wrong start time. It's 2 o'clock. Welcome. And if you've missed this, well, and you're watching back, sorry about that. It was all my fault. I've got two of the best and brightest agency directors in the land joining me today on the live stream. I'm going to bring them up in 1 second, but I just want to tell you briefly about what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk to them for the next hour, asking them questions about how they grew their agency and what lessons they learned, what things they wish they'd have known before they started. It's live. Could be a bit bumpy. We've all experienced Wi-Fi problems and dogs coming into Zoom calls and all that sort of thing. So we could have plenty of that going on. We've also got a beer. If you haven't got one, go and grab one, sit, and then just enjoy the next hour. It's Friday afternoon. It's roasting hot in most places. Just kick back and relax. Taking questions from the floor as well. We're not waiting till the end. Fire your questions in as they come along. You've got 2 ways to do that. You can put them in the comments on YouTube and they pop up here so I can see them. If you've got any questions, or you can tweet them. Just use hashtag AAA. You can see that on the screen now with the details. So if you want to ask a question, doesn't matter what it is, fire it through. We'll pick the best questions and ask them from there. Do let us know in the comments where you're watching from, what agency you're from, whereabouts you are, if it's hot, if it's rainy. You know, we're British, we can't do anything without talking about the weather. Anyway, let's bring the guests up. So I'm joined today, as you probably all know, because you've signed up for the event, by Carrie Rose from Rise at 7. Hiya, Carrie.
Hello, you're right.
Hi, Carrie. And by Tom Etherington from Evolved Search.
Hello.
Tom, how are you doing? So quick cheers to you both. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
and thank you for coming along on your Friday afternoon. I'm going to shut up for a minute and just give myself a quick drink. But Carrie, do you want to just give us a quick introduction to you and to Rise at 7? I'm sure most people who've not been living on the moon Rise at 7 by now, but I'll let you tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Carrie. I'm a director at Rise at 7, co-founded the agency about a year ago. So we're only 12 months old. We are a startup. I started the agency with a guy called Stephen Kenwright, who is an SEO. Most people know him on Twitter. But we are 32 staff. We do everything from SEO, content, digital PR. We have an office in Sheffield, which is where our HQ is, but we have an office in London as well. And we work with the likes of Misguided, Odeon, MyProtein, so huge global brands already in the space of 12 months, which is insane. So yeah, that's an overview about us.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Tom, tell us about not Newcastle. Tell us about Evolved Search in Newcastle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tom, Operations Director at Evolved. We're a specialist search agency, so we only do SEO, paid, content marketing, digital PR. We've been going for about 6 years now, just coming at the end of our 6th year. And I've been at the business for 3, so the 2 original co-founders, Ian and Dave, set the business up out of a spare bedroom, the classic agency story. And then I joined about 3 years ago, like I say, when staff was about 15 then, and we're on track to be 40 in the next few weeks with the rules that we've got out. So last few years have been pretty busy and pretty full on. Client-wise, we work in a few specific areas, so automotive is one of our key areas. We work with a big leasing company called Select Car Leasing and PSA Group, which is Peugeot, Citroën and DS, the head office there, and a few finance clients as well. That's where we've had a lot of success in the last couple of years in particular as well. So those are our key areas that we mainly work in.
Great stuff. So I'll say hi to Jeff, who's joining us from Plymouth. David from Wokingham. Must admit, I've got absolutely no idea where Wokingham is. And we've got the Blue Peter Travelers badge going to Johnny Lombard, who's coming from America. And yes, you should apologize being from America, but don't worry, we'll not hold it against you today anyway. So let's jump into it. First of all, Carrie, I'm going to start with you. What does success look like? You've gone, as an agency, you've gone from nothing a year ago to monster brands, massive turnover. Where are you going? When will you know you're a success?
Do you know what? That's a really hard question, because I think when I started Rise, where we are today is not what I expected at all. So I guess this is right now a success. This is like more than what I ever imagined. I guess we expected to be here maybe year 3, year 4. So for me, I'm happy. I'm happy where we are. It's been a hard year. But I think where we're expecting to go, so we're at 32 staff now, and we currently operate just the UK. So we do US, but mainly any English speaking country basically that we do. So internationally is where we want to go, mainly because there's so many countries out there that are quite behind in what we do, especially in the digital PR and link building space. So we're looking at expanding first to the US in the next 2 years. We're going to be there by June 2022. So when I say going to be there, that means opening an office. We already have people helping us out there. We already have about 12 US clients. So that's kind of the next stage, but also international across Europe as well. But I think overall success, I think for us, we're aiming to get to maybe 100 staff. We're not fixed on that. We're not fixed on a certain number of people, a certain number of revenue. We're actually myself and Ken Wright launched this agency because it's what we love to do. So I think our business strategy and goals are a lot less, it's not driven by anything other than just what we love to do and our passion. So I think success for us is where we're at already, but I think it's time to just take it up a notch by going international.
And where was the point that you realized you were going to, it was going to go big? You started it probably hoping it was going to go big, but when did you sit there and look at each other and go, shit, this is taking off? What was that point? When did you realize you'd hit that tipping point?
It was quite fast. I'd say we got invited to Misguided. So Misguided had gone through a pitch process. So they spoke to about 6 agencies. And they basically just dropped us an email and said, we've seen you. We saw that you're new. You only launched like 2 months ago. Do you want to come in and show us what you can do? And obviously I looked at Camera and was like, shit, like what we're going to do here? Like Misguided was my dream brand. Like I wrote a list before I started the agency of the brands that I want to work with, and Misguided was top 5. So I was like, oh my God, like I panicked. And when we went into that pitch, I knew I had to stand out because number one, I had no case studies. I had 3 members of staff, including myself and Ken Wright. I had to blag it, but I also had to just show them what we could do. Even if it was 2 of us, we needed to look like a big agency. We could deliver big results. But I think we went in and we won it. We literally won it on the spot. And I couldn't believe it. I actually went home and cried. I did. I cried. That was the moment I realized, it hit us. And after that, I think we got invited to a pitch, and we was up against my old agency that I used to work for. And that was the moment as well, like being up against these big agencies that had 200 odd staff, and there was only like 5 of us. That was when I realized, okay, we're onto something here, basically.
Brilliant. And Tom, same questions to you. Firstly, what does success look like? Where are you going as an agency? You've already laid out you want to be at 40 people, fairly soon. But what's the sort of the end goal? What's the 5-year plan?
Yeah, so it's funny you say 5-year plan, because we we definitely have that in place now. The first few years of the agency, it was kind of a typical startup story, seeing how well it goes and, doing everything you can to succeed, bring people on board and basically create a good place for them to work. The whole agency started because Ian and Dave wanted to do something different and actually live up to, what agencies say to clients and staff. I'm sure we've all experienced it where it can go wrong, and that's when I came on board as well for those exact same sort of values and what I wanted. And we want to just keep that going as long as we can. But there did come a time when it was kind of like, shit, what do we do? This is getting really crazy, and how do we control this and make sure that we can do the best possible job for the agency and that people work for us? So we've now set some more strict targets in place. We're just coming to kind of year 2, about to start that of a growth plan. And this time next year, we've just done about 2.5 this year, and the target for next year is 4 million in turnover, and about 60 staff at that point. And then 5 years in total, so another 3 years after that, we're looking to be over 100, and ideally one of the leading independent agencies for what we do. Certainly the Northeast is an area we want to conquer in the next year or so, and beyond that as well. And basically just keep the same sort of values we've had since day one of the business, really just making a really good place for people to work and the sort of clients we want to work with, providing that. And
so that follow-up question as well, at what point, I know you joined after a couple of years, but at what point did you realize you were in an agency that was going up, not just bumping along, you were just going places? What point did you realize that? Where were you sat with Ian and Dave and looking and going, right, we're off here, what's happening?
Yeah, it's definitely a point that you do come to. And again, we had that kind of realization that, we could have something big here. And I think for Evolved in particular, we had some pretty early success with the work that had been done. We won a pretty big award pretty much in year 2 of the business when, there's still only 12, 13 staff in total, which was the best SEO campaign at the UK Search Awards. And I know awards get a lot of stick, and we'll probably come on to that. But from that point onwards, and I was joining around that time as well, we've been pretty much catapulted forward because of that award, with a brand in Newcastle, an agency that no one knew about, to the point where companies like PSA come directly to you to want to work with you from what they've heard and what they've seen. That was a big turning point for us, and awards are a big part of what we do now for that reason. We don't really have, a lot of outbound sales so far. It's been pretty much on word of mouth and kind of the recognition we've had for case studies and awards, like I say. So it did come a point where we had too much, business coming in, which is a great problem to have, but we needed to figure out what we wanted to do and how we can, scale it. And like I say, the next few years are going to be interesting of how we change our approach, because so far it's been, not that it's not been difficult, because it's been extremely difficult, but a lot of the works came to us, a lot of referrals, and a lot of clients have heard about us that way. So it's about channeling that in terms of, how much further can we go, really.
If you have got any questions for Carrie and Tom, please do fire them in. There's people using the YouTube comments already. Hello from Milton Keynes, Manchester, Chicago. But get your questions in as well. Carrie and Tom are involved in running huge agencies that do great stuff. So any questions, get them in. Tweet me using hashtag AAA, and we'll ask the questions as soon as we can. Tom, I want to come back to you on something you've just said there about you've got too much work. There's probably a lot of agency owners and directors listening going, wow, that's a brilliant problem to have. But is it a brilliant problem to have? And Carrie, I have an answer ready, because I'm coming to you with the same question in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a great problem to have. And especially right now, it's going to be difficult for a lot of companies in future. And we've had a pretty rough and difficult few months, like everyone. But in terms of why it's such a great problem to have, it's because the effort that's going into getting those leads and getting those clients on board. The whole business is built on a value that is about great client results. That's the only thing we focus on. And, if our clients do well, we'll do well. And that's why we have a lot of great case studies, because the effort and, the campaigns that we're running are brilliant by, not only our standards, but in the industry as well. And I think what we didn't want for the agency in general is to have any kind of values that it's like transparency and great culture written all over the walls, but the place is actually the place internally doesn't actually reflect that. And so for us, client results is everything we do, and we tie it all back to that. And that's why hopefully people come to us and clients do as well. But like I say, we've had one salesperson that kind of qualifies leads for the entire business history. Essentially, we've got a couple of guys now, and they're going to help us take us to the next level. But it is difficult to understand what sort of clients you want to work with, and what's right for you as well. Because again, some of the stuff we'll come on to shortly. It's not always a great match depending on who comes through the door to want to work with you, and you've got to be strict in terms of qualifying, so it's right for you as well as an agency.
Yeah. And Carrie, is there such a thing as too much work?
I love everything that Tom's just said, and the reason I identify with everything he said. When you talk then, Tom, I was thinking I need to have a chat with you a separate time, because we've experienced the exact same thing, which has been so hard for a startup. So if anybody is like in a startup now or starting an agency, too much work and growing fast is hard. And the reason for that is because the first thing that you're trying to do is deliver an amazing service. And if you've got too much on, the first thing you got to do is hire. So the work isn't the problem, is hiring or getting the talent in as fast as possible. And I think I keep saying to Ken Wright, my business partner, we've got lucky. I feel as if this like whole COVID scenario has been lucky for us, because there's so many people out of work that we're able to pick up, and we're hiring staff fast because of that. Unemployment rates are high. So we're like, okay, we've got the choice of so much talent now when it comes to hiring. And that's the real problem of having too much work. We've been the same. So like, since launching, I think it's about 98% of work that has come in has been inbound. We haven't done any outbound, except from I sent a box of sweets once to somebody. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but it did really well. It's a bit crazy. But yeah, we literally do no outbound. We don't have a sales team. So every single inbound comes to myself or Ken Wright. We pick it up ourselves. So it's been mad. Even to I think January time, it was so busy. We was all like working our asses off that much that Mark Rofe, most people know him on Twitter, he kind of pulled me aside, and I'll admit this. He said, Carrie, I think it's too much now. He's like, I don't know if too much can ruin us. Like, can it shoot us to the ground? Like, are we going to fail here? And I was thinking, I don't know. I've never done this before. Literally, I was shitting myself. And I was thinking, is this too much to handle? And I spoke to Ken Wright about it. I've done market analysis. I've done everything. And Ken Wright kind of sent me an article, which really like just helped. And it was an article about social change. So in their first year, they made about 1.4 million. And then in their second year, they forecasted or wanted to hit 6 million. So Ken Wright said, do you think they slowed down? Do you think they started turning down work? And I was like, no. We went, no, they put a fucking rocket up it. They put a rocket up it, and they kept going. They hired, they was, just this, the strategy from taking from year one to year two. So that motivated me, like, keep going. We can do it. And we have. It's kind of like we hit it was like this hump that we had to get over. So I think, yeah, it was hard having so much going on. I was knackered. There's times where I've like literally had no sleep. But it's all been worth it. Now we are at 32 staff. We've got a process and a structure in place to allow for it. So in a much better position.
Great stuff. So there's a lot of questions coming in. There's some really great ones. There's one I want to pick out. There's a sort of a couple talking about raising awareness and winning new business and stuff like that. And I think, Carrie, I've seen you talk on LinkedIn a couple of times about the fact that you've been very deliberate in making a lot of noise on social. I can't quite remember. You probably didn't phrase it that way, but you've been very deliberate. I think you mentioned about the hires you've made, the things you posted, the things you've done. Was that a key step for you in the growth of Rise? Because people are asking, how do you get that growth when you've just started? Is it contacts? Is it the little black book? What is it? There's a few people ask that sort of question.
Sure. So absolutely. Another question I know is coming up is, what was one thing that you wish someone told you? And it was the same answer. And it was, focus on your personal brand before your agency's brand. So I don't know if anybody's been on Rise at 7 website. It breaks every 2 minutes. The design is shit. I did it in my front room. I built the website myself on WordPress. Our brand was a logo that somebody did for us for free. So our brand right now doesn't look slick, but what we are slick at is our personal brands. So me shouting on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and shouting about the clients we win, the hires that we've had, it builds this story of this is the workplace that we are, working in every day. We wanted to showcase that Rise at 7 is an awesome place to work, that we're thriving during such a time where not many businesses are thriving. And we wanted to, it's mainly about positioning Rise at 7 as the best place to work in Sheffield or in the North or wherever. And once we position that, people want to work for us. We get over 100 applications a week. It's insane. So if we can position ourselves as the best place to work, all the other stuff comes. So the client comes because you've got good staff, the staff are happy because you're delivering a good service because you've got staff. So all of that falls into place once you've got the good staff, and shouting about it and promoting yourself creates that message really to young people that are energetic, to people that are wanting to step up in their career, to be somewhere fun, to be somewhere different. So, myself and Ken Wright are two people I'm from Lincoln, he's from Doncaster. We started an agency in Sheffield. Who the hell gives a shit about us? Like, we're not big men in London, New York. We're just, a startup agency. So for us to get where we are today was mainly about promotion, shouting about, look at us.
One other thing as well, just following up on that, you definitely put something out about if you want to work with HSBC, talk like HSBC and act like that. And if you want to work with Misguided, do that. Dig into that a little bit more for me, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think when I used to work at Edit as an example, absolutely love that agency, branded 3 days. They was looking to work with the likes of HSBC. They was very corporate, the way that they communicated their brand, their agency, their processes, their structure. And what I found is when they did that in their comms, they didn't get to work with the cool brands, the sexy ones, maybe startup brands that are a year or 2 years old, but wanted to be big. And that's where I want to hit. So my mission is to work with the likes of Misguided or Gymshark or Greg's, these brands, that are doing things differently, that have a different tone of voice. And one thing that I just realized is if I want to work with them, I need to act like them. I need them to feel as if you're the type of people for us, because clients hire people, not really agencies. That's what they do. It's all about the people. So I hire based on the people that I want to work on certain accounts. We don't act like HSBC because I'm not that bothered about working on HSBC. So big budgets, but
yeah. Now I think there's a little bit of fighting talk going on here, because it was a little microaggression there. I think you threw towards Tom when you said you wanted to work with Greg's. Greg's obviously been a massive Geordie company. I could see you. You were just trying to throw it in and going, yeah, we'll pick up the Geordie clients. But I've lost where I was going now. Tom, what about you? That element of promoting yourself. Awards have been good for you as an agency.
Yeah, definitely. And what Carrie's saying there is definitely resonates with a lot of what we're trying to do as well. I think it's interesting as well because we've had two different stories, really. I mean, you can see from Carrie and Stephen what they're doing. They've taken everything they know and they've taken it from previous agencies they've worked on and then launched from day one with that in mind. I think for Evolved, it started off, like I say, in very small beginnings, and the clients we used to work with to where we are now, there's been a massive amount of work to get to there. So, I remember a couple of years ago, our first objective for everyone in the business and one thing we wanted to achieve that we would report back on at Christmas was to land a brand, a household name, a business, because where we started and the campaign that we won an award with very early on, no one knew who that business was. And probably today people do because of the work we've done. But, we didn't land massive brands within the first, few weeks. Someone's asked in the comments about, how important it is to have kind of a black book of connections and people you can, work with. We didn't really have that. Ian and Dave, got some clients from people they'd worked with in the past, but, very small. I mean, I'm talking about websites that sell cast iron radiators and power tools. That was our bread and butter in terms of content marketing. We've managed to work our way up to, the work we're doing now. And like I say, we did have as an objective for the year to land a household name, and more eventually follow after that. But we had some pretty difficult decisions to make with the clients we first started working with that we had to, gradually wind them down and set some minimums in place that we wanted to work with brands and also, businesses that suited us. But it's been a hard slog to get here.
Sorry, Tom. There's a question from James Lees, which hopefully we'll get up on the screen, about how you've managed to grow without relying on so much outbound activity. Is that you said you've sort of slogged your way up from working with the cast iron radiator sellers, probably a great business, through to where you are now with PSA selling aluminium. What are cars made out of? Iron. Anyway, so you've worked your way up. I'm going to leave that alone and just walk away from that. But so you've worked your way up to working with these bigger brands, but without a huge amount of outbound activity. What did you change? What you said? Okay, we want to land a brand, but that was the big objective. That was the strategy. What tactics did you change beneath that to help you get there?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting one. Because I know that sounds a little bit crazy to say as well, that there wasn't a huge amount of outbound activity. But what we realized basically is where we want to sit in the market. So we did actually go through a full rebrand from the company we were then, which was Evolve Digital Marketing, similar to what Carrie's saying there. The logo was done I think it cost about a tenner, and the website was god awful. And we had to go through an exercise that we had to figure out, who do we want to be? What sort of clients we want to work with? We want to specialize in search. We've got no intentions of going elsewhere. Let's just focus in on that, and then get the clients in terms of fit that that mold and want to work with us that way. Awards is definitely one thing, but just general marketing and PR that we do in terms of similar to what Carrie's saying about making it a great place to work. In the Northeast, we were the unknown agency, and there were several established agencies where I'd worked previously, and a lot of our employees do as well. And we wanted to actually take the lead and had to make a big focus on that. So once you start getting a bit more known for you being a company, being a great employer, and so on and so forth, it can attract people to you, and they hear about you in various ways. Recruitment's a great one that you can talk about. Every time we hire someone, we do some PR about it. We shout and say, look at these people joining our team. Look at their expertise and their backgrounds. But I mean, don't get me wrong, there was some outbound activity. It's just we've never done cold calling. We've never been hitting the phones. We've always been known for, great case studies, results, referrals, and word of mouth, really.
And a question, I'm going to come to you, Tom, while you're talking, keep you going, but also for you, Carrie. You both mentioned, when we said about success, and we've talked a lot about staff, but you both mentioned success quite a lot in terms of staff numbers. Is that... why is that? Why is it not turnover or client numbers or profitability? Why was staff numbers the proxy that you chose for success?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, staff numbers is an indicator, but it shouldn't definitely be the focus. I think it gets a bit of stick when people claim about having a head count of X, and that was the problem for us in the Northeast in particular. There's agencies that are hundreds of staff in our space, but we were always, 20, 30 people and doing bigger and better things. So I think headcount's an indicator of the size of the agency and how well you're doing, not the other way around. And again, I'll come on to a few things that we've learned, that recruiting because you feel like there's more coming in, isn't always the best thing, especially right now at the time we're in as well. But I think when we get to that 100 headcount, the turnover will be, the thing that we'll be focusing on as an agency, and, therefore being able to have good profit levels. That's what we're all about in terms of making anything that we do with clients goes back into the team, in terms of the the benefits we offer, all the different kind of staff perks and socials, and all the different training and kind of skills that the team have. We want to invest in that. That's why we want to grow to that size, and that'll mean that we've got all kinds of options available to us.
And keep talking, Tom. There's a question just coming from David about recruitment. And do you look at young raw staff and train them? Do you get experienced staff and bring them in? There's obviously salary discrepancies with that sort of thing as well. What's the general approach, or is there not a one size fits all?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that I've had to focus a lot on in the last 2 years in particular. Like I say, it's not easy growing from 15 to almost 40 staff, especially in Newcastle and the digital scene there. Like I say, there's some pretty established companies, and they're well ahead of us. They're in kind of 10, 15, 20 years have been around. So what we've had to do is try and attract talent and people that have got agency experience, and that's not always easy. But in terms of the kind of backgrounds that people have, for us, we needed to get more experienced people in as we've been growing, and that's what we've gradually done. I think you have to be in a pretty solid position to be able to add, young graduates or, people straight out of even school and college to the team, because, you need people to be having an impact from day one. What we've done in the last 12 months has even been further than that we've been actually hiring, heads of departments, seniors, because we're now kind of backfilling as the agency's grown that way. We haven't had the ability to get really senior people from day one. And that's, there's some absolutely brilliant people in their team and have been there for the full duration, and they'll have seen how everyone's developed and how everyone's grown alongside that. But yeah, we're not in a position just yet to be having people that are fresh out of uni, it's their first role. We want to get there, and that's definitely part of the next growth plan. But we've had to really try and get that expertise and find it from other areas of Newcastle and the surrounding areas of that.
Carrie, and what about you? You've had some interesting hires, some hires who've made it famous on billboards, some hires who've gone viral for all the wrong reasons, which turned into all the right reasons. What's your view on hiring? Do you pick raw talent and shape it, or do you get established experts and work with them?
So it's interesting. There's another question in the chat, which I'll try to touch on as well, around what we did first. So in our plan, it was to hire, I guess, not grads, but not senior people. So someone that maybe has done it for a year or two, and bring them in and then kind of like teach them our way. However, because we was winning huge accounts from day one, we couldn't do that. I needed people to take on Misguided. We won Go Compare as well in our first couple of months, and Cat Kitten. So that's huge for us, and was like we can't just put grads on those accounts or young people to run them. I needed people to take that off my hands because I had a million other things that I had to do and run in a startup. So I think I had to completely change my approach. So from the start, we hired senior people. So I'm talking kind of like maybe management level people that have done senior SEO or senior digital PR before, and brought them in, and they're now in like management positions. So then they can manage and grow a team. So we had to do that. And now a year in, we're starting to get the grads in. So specifically in digital PR, I think it's so hard at the minute because we're so busy. It's hard to train people in SEO, as an example. It is a very specific skill set that you have to train someone from the start. And I think with digital PR, we have a lot more staff to be able to be more hands-on with that. But we did make some big hires, mainly for a couple of reasons. So I'm happy to be like completely transparent in this. About halfway through, I was at a conference, and somebody said, "Oh, who are this Rise at 7?" And I overheard them. And someone said, "Oh, they're a digital PR agency." And I straight away was like, "We're fucking up here." And came out, I was like, why? And I said, people are saying we're a digital PR agency. We're not. We're an SEO agency. But because we shout so much about digital PR, people don't know we're awesome at SEO. We have a full SEO team. We've done like award-winning work. So I was like, there's a problem here with our marketing. So what we did is we hired a big name SEO, and that was Jerry White. So Jerry came from Just Eat down in London, and he was a senior person, been there, done that. He's grown teams, grown service areas. But we needed that. It was a perfect time for us to bring someone like that in, not just from a marketing message, but we needed somebody to make our SEO offering slick, to grow it to what it is today, and it works. So I think there's some things that you have to do that you didn't necessarily plan on doing. But that was not straight away. That was maybe like 6 months in. So it was interesting seeing how we've had to adapt. But I think we started senior and now starting to get in the grads.
Great stuff. I want to take a little bit of a swerve now from your growth to talk a little bit about what's maybe not been as brilliant on the growth curve. That's a bit of a euphemism for saying what went wrong, right? Everybody likes to know the horror stories. Everybody wants to, you go to conferences and you stand having a beer afterwards with everybody, and everyone shares a war story about a client where the relationship all fell to pieces, or what happened and what went wrong. Everyone shares these stories at conferences over a beer. Very few people share them during daylight on a Friday afternoon on a live stream with hundreds of people. But I'm going to ask you two to do it anyway. So in the spirit of being fair, Carrie, you were talking. Shall I come to you first, or do you want to let Tom go first?
I don't mind going first.
I'm going to let you go first.
In a year's time, it's been hard to kind of pinpoint what horrors we've had. I guess there's a client horror, naming no names, as in we won an account 3 months in. Big account, big brand, doing digital PR. And we ran a campaign, did well, hit the KPI. And we only just got paid 2 weeks ago. So it's been a year. It's been like a year since we got paid. And it was a big budget. So for things like that, so hard for us as a startup, because when we won that account, we hired to be able to manage it. And then we haven't been paid for it. There's a lot of learning curves in that sense of making sure that you are more strict when it comes to kind of payment terms. I guess typical payment terms in an agency are 30 to 60 days. But I think some clients have requested 90 days, and we're like, hell no, that's way too long. So I think if anybody's on here starting an agency, don't kind of be lenient and think, oh yeah, that'll be fine, because these things do happen. The biggest brands are probably the hardest ones as well. Trying to get payment from them are the hardest, and the smallest brands are the easiest to get paid. But I think that the learning curve, or what's the hardest part of this, is chasing invoices and making sure you get paid as an agency is so time consuming. Obviously, you have to do that every month. We have 50 odd clients now across the world, and we've got Canada, US, Europe, the lot, and we have to chase these manually. We didn't have a team internally doing this, but now we have. So we have a finance team a finance person basically, who started only last week, but we had to do that because it was taking so much time to chase invoices. So I guess that was one horror story that I know every agency owner will identify with and has definitely been through.
Look, and I think you're absolutely right. The bigger the company, the bigger bastards they are when it comes to payment terms. I think, look, let's just call it what it is. Big companies are an absolute nightmare when it comes to getting paid. And I think sometimes they're just dealing with such great sums a lot of the time, often millions, that you're just a drop in the ocean that's waiting for their work experience kid to sign it off. That's my view on it anyway. Or they're just utter shit. I'm not sure which. What about you, Tom? Any horror stories that you wanted to share?
Yeah, it's funny because that's exactly the one I had in mind, as same as Carrie, in terms of invoicing and payments, and that's working in SEO. There's hundreds of horror stories, as you say. Scroll through Twitter or to speak to anyone about developers de-indexing websites and all that kind of thing, which can always cause stress. But as an agency director and owners, the stress is in the money, because you've got people to pay. You've got, they've all got their own lives and families, and you're basically supporting all of them, and that's what does keep you awake at night if there's any problems like that. And we had a bit of a tricky one on me personally, that I'd spent so much time on a campaign, and someone new came in and decided basically they didn't want to pay any of the invoices, they didn't want to justify the work we'd done, and the time and effort that went into chasing that up, it didn't make it worth for anyone. The amount I had to do, the amount the other directors, and we had to get legal people involved, debt collectors, and it wasn't for that much money either. It was literally just because of our contract that we were entitled to that, and it all kind of went wrong. But we eventually got there, and I think what we learned from that is that the time from ourselves, working on that isn't worth it. We've got finance people as well for that exact reason, because you've got to look at your own hourly rate that you're worth to the business, and if you're spending that chasing invoices or unpaid work, it can just leave you, much further behind. And that's what I regretted most about that whole thing, not the stress and all those things that come with it. It was actually I'd wasted time where it could have been better spent elsewhere in the business and with other people that deserved it.
So go on, Carrie.
I was just about to say, a lot of the horror stories that I think I face are less client focused and more kind of just running an agency. I guess there's some things that we haven't shared on social that I'm happy to be honest about. And that when we started the agency, because we used to work for, so myself and Ken Wright worked for an agency called Edit and Branded 3. They're basically the same agency, got rebrand. And because he was a director there, I think in his contracts, you're not allowed to do certain things like start agencies, whatever. So we followed rules. So we weren't allowed to start an agency within so many miles of the old agency. And we didn't. So we stuck to all of that. But we got it all. We got legal letters, threats, court summons, you name it. And that's something we haven't shared on social. We haven't shared at all. That it was a tough month or two for us. I had letters come into my Rise at 7 office as well as my home. And for somebody that's never done this before in my life, I was shitting myself. I thought, oh my God, ruin my business. This is it. I was like, oh my God. But I think there's a few people that might be watching this thinking, I don't know, maybe that's an issue, maybe they're freelancing and they shouldn't be, or I don't know, there's so many things that we all do, but we're all human. And what I did is make sure I didn't do anything wrong. We didn't take clients, we didn't take staff, we didn't do anything wrong. But we just kind of stayed out of the way and stayed quiet for a bit. And that was hard for me.
Somebody described you early on as having an infectious personality. I first met Carrie doing Learn Inbound. She was presenting there, and she's still the only person who did a 60-minute presentation in 20 minutes. It's just went through it like a train. It was amazing. All brilliant as well, but amazingly done. So I just, excuse me, just to let you all know as well, I am doing a bit of research about stuff that goes wrong with agency and client relationships. I will send you an email out once that survey is out, and hopefully a lot of you will fill it in. A short series of questions. I don't want names. I don't want finger pointing or anything like that. I'm just trying to capture some of those funny stories that happen in agencies, stuff that goes wrong when client expectations aren't quite the same as what your expectations are, and all that sort of stuff. The stuff that you tell somebody over a pint, but you can do it anonymously. Tell it to your Uncle Andy, and I'll tell it to the world. That's basically what I'm going to try and achieve with that. But yeah, so keep an eye out. There'll be an email coming out probably early September with that, and please do send it because we'd really love to hear that. One of the things, just picking up on what you've both said there, and it's kind of a version of a question that somebody else has asked as well, is just about contracts. Do you sign your clients up to contracts? Do you hold them to them? You know, how does that work? Do clients get a bit freaked out and go, no, this is a monthly thing, I just want to pay you monthly? Tom, I'll come to you first. How does that work with you?
Yeah, so that's it's a particularly interesting one because that's something we've definitely learned the hard way. You know, I think when you're just starting up and you're trying to get work and you're trying to secure more clients, or if a massive brand comes along and, you know, they're willing to work with you, you do tend to feel like you should offer them the world in return. That incident, what I spoke about, did come down to having a pretty secure contract in place to be able to get, you know, sorted. But we have learned in the past that it's you know, the most important thing is to have yourself protected, and you know, we're moving towards a model where we now want, you know, 12-month commitments, if not longer, and proving the return or potential return that you're going to get from that is one way of doing it, because in SEO, especially content marketing, a lot of businesses don't want to sign up for too long. They might want to do one campaign, see how that goes, see if you hit the results. But when it comes to contracts and what's been best for us, we're moving to a more longer-term model and trying to get long-term commitment, because that's the only way you can really forecast, you know, future revenue and forecast future hires to backfill and actually deliver that work. If you've got a contract that's on, you know, 30 days rolling, that's very risky. And like I say, we've learned from that quite a bit.
Okay, and Carrie, what about you? Do you sign up to contracts for a year, 2 years, whatever? Is that kind of standard practice for you?
Yeah, when we started, we did both, so projects as well as retainers. I think for a startup company, it was different. The reason being is people came to us and said, we've heard you're good, but can you prove you're good? We need to do a trial. That's what a lot of people did. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, so I've got to do a project to prove I'm good. So obviously, as an agency that was growing fast and we had to secure staff, and obviously with everything going on, we needed long-term commitments. But what we did is, in a lot of cases, is, okay, we'll do a trial for you. But if I hit X amount of KPI, then you've got to sign for 12 months or 6 months. That's a typical kind of like deal that we usually make. And most of them said, yeah. And I think what we had in our favor is because most clients came to us. So what they often did is they would come to us and then they'll go, but we only want this, we only want to do a project, or, you know, trying to basically negotiate. And I'm like, wait, you came to me. Like, I didn't come to you, you came to me. So you obviously want to work with us. So I kind of then, like, I think that kind of being strong and saying we only sign for 6 months or 12 months as a minimum, I think also creates that like fear of missing out, as in like, oh, well, if we don't sign them, we'll lose them. Brands now want to work with good agencies just as much as good agencies want to work with good brands. So I think you have to be strict in saying this is our minimum. We still did projects, but only for brands we wanted on our website. So I'm talking big brands with big names, or people that just made our lives fun. I've worked with on project basis with a client who had a very, very small budget, didn't really tick that box in terms of finance, but they allowed us to be free in terms of ideas. And that we want to create a place that's fun. So we did some project work with them, and then they went off on their way, and we delivered some amazing results for them. So I think you have to weigh up on, is this fun, or is this a project that's going to ruin our lives for the next 4 weeks? If so, don't do it. It's not worth it. So yeah, we had to weigh up a lot of those things.
So we had a question on Twitter, which I was going to come to later, but you mentioned about coming up with, you know, the freedom to come up with ideas there. Natalie Archer, hi Natalie. I said, what are your top tips? No, let me just clarify this first. She used this word that I hate because it's not even a word and it only seems to exist in the agency world. She says, what are your top tips for ideation? So number one, ideation is not a word. It never has been a word, and just because it's in some shitty American dictionary doesn't mean it's actually a word, right? Ideation is not a word. Natalie, this isn't a dig at you, it's a dig at everybody in the agency world. So I'm going to rephrase that. What are your top tips for coming up with ideas, Carrie?
So I'll try and summarize them in 3. I haven't really done this before, so I'm just blagging it. But top 1, research what everybody else is doing. So keep an eye on every single agency, whether that's Rise 7 or Digital Loft or Epiphany or whoever it is.
Sorry, Carrie, I'm going to have to interrupt you. Is that what was behind your tweet the other day? If my competitor farts, I'll know about it.
Yeah.
So what was the exact one? If my competitor farts, I'll be able to smell it. Was that the word you used?
No, that definitely was not it.
Right, you carry on talking. I'm going to find it because you put it on LinkedIn. So you carry on, and I'm going to have it up on the screen shortly.
So keep an eye on competitors. So whether that's your own competitors, so different agencies, or keep an eye on brands. So I know, for an example, Compare the Market. They're not my client, but I know they're very active at building links. So I have an alert set up every time Compare the Market get mentioned in the press because I can see what they're up to. They build hundreds and thousands of links every single year. They work with about 5 agencies, I believe. So they're very, there it is. My competitors could fart and I'd know about it. Exactly. I keep an eye on everything. And I think that that helps inspire ideas. It helps you. Ken Wright always says, knowing yourself is important, but knowing everybody else is just as important too. And I think you've just got to know where you fit in the market. But from an ideation point of view, it helps knowing what everybody's up to. Second tip, look at the headlines that journalists are covering. Take a good scroll through Lad Bible, Daily Mail, The Sun, whoever it is that you aspire to get a link from, and just look at the sort of stories that they cover and just copy them. So think about the headline first and then work backwards of what that should be. So I always just kind of create, oh my God, wouldn't it be good to like create a story that gives me this headline? And then I work backwards and then you're done. And what's my next tip? I thought of a really good one a minute ago. I can't remember. It's gone.
No, Tom, do you have any tips on ideation? And then what I'm going to do after ideation, I want to talk about how we're kind of cart before the horse a little bit. I want to talk about onboarding clients, but tell us about what the sort of ideas process is that I said ideation, didn't I? Shit. Tell us about your idea generation process, Tom.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the things Carrie is spoken about there is very similar. I mean, we've been obsessed with competitors since we realized, what we wanted to achieve and how we wanted to get to where we wanted. So pretty much every campaign that runs, we're talking about it internally, and the content and digital PR teams are all over it. So, the similar agencies that Carrie's mentioned there. We also use, award shortlisting. So every content marketing campaign that gets shortlisted for an award, we go and find it. We look at how many links it's generated, and we, basically everything is repeated in digital PR. Sometimes very closely, and the ideas are almost identical, but they still work. There's always stuff to learn, and also journalists always cover the same things. So, when it's hot, there's going to be stories about that. If there's snow, there's going to be stories about that. At the minute, finances and the economy are all talking points, and you can get your clients in there. So it's always been aware of what people are talking about, what they're doing, and working back from that to come up with your ideas. But I don't have to worry about that too much anymore. There's a big content team there probably talking about me on Slack right now if I've not covered off something. But I think it is really important to have a proper process in place and kill ideas that you don't think are going to work, because a lot of time goes into the design, development, and if it's not going to land, that's one of our biggest USPs as an agency, is that we put the same amount of effort into every step of that process. So ideation, sorry, Andy, through to the content research, the actual production of it, the design, development, and outreach, they all get equal. Because if you don't do one of them right, you're going to have a much weaker chance of success with that individual campaign.
Okay. Just for those of you watching and listening, to tell you what we're going to do for the next few minutes, I've got a couple more questions for Carrie and Tom, and then the last 10 minutes taking us up to 3 o'clock. I'm going to try and do quick fire questions from some of the ones in the comments that we haven't seen. Send them through on Twitter using hashtag AAA, and we'll just try and get through as many as we can in a quick fire way. So we'll get through what we can in the time that we have available. But the question I wanted to talk, Tom, you talked a little bit about process, and I will flag at this stage that I've worked with Evolved on a couple of things, but I want to talk to you about onboarding clients and how you do that, because we worked, Tom, on a process of asking better questions, for the agency, so that they can get more information out to clients. But how important has that change been for you? And this isn't tell me how wonderful I am, but I'm talking about how, you can tell me that if you like, but how has that been important for you as an agency to ask better questions and get better information from your clients?
Yeah, I think that's a key learning that we've, found out the hard way again, is that the further you get into a client relationship or even a campaign specifically talking about SEO or paid, the more you find out. And the less you find out up front, if you're asked to pitch within 24 hours or submit a response to a generic RFP, it's never going to turn out the way you want it, and it's never going to be in your hands to kind of lead on it, really. I mean, you're always going to be taking instruction from the client. So yeah, what we've made more of a conscious effort to do is put a lot more time into qualifying, and in terms of the clients we speak to, getting a lot more detail from them as a business, and not just, we want some link building, can you do this for us, as we might have done a few years back. The only way you're going to keep a client around for the long term and for years instead of months is that you're well ingrained in the way they do things and you know everything about their business. That's the way we're trying to approach things, and we are, we've got quite a lot of going on at the minute to do that even better. And in terms of the work we've done together, that was very much about strategy and finding these questions out before we built something that 6 months down the line was irrelevant, or it no longer mattered, or we'd missed something really important at the sales pitch that actually we could have used, and we could have focused entirely on that. So I think in terms of general advice, it would be to make sure whoever you're working with or any client you're taking on, you get to the detail. And if it's not right and you're not they're not ticking the questions you've got as much as you're answering theirs, then I would walk away. And we tend to turn away more business than we take on right now, because we need those answers to be able to do the best possible job and get the best possible results as well.
And what about you, Carrie? What's that sort of onboarding process like for you and your clients, that strategic approach? Is it they come to you and say, we want this, and you deliver it? Or are you into a process at the beginning to say, look, we need to ask questions here and understand more about your business?
So it's interesting because every single client differs. I'll give a good example, and I think they'll be happy to say this. I was speaking to Go Compare, we work with them now on a long-term basis, but I kind of said, we want to feel ingrained, because that is super important, like Tom said. I was like, how do I do that? We'll have an onboarding day. He said, no, I don't want an onboarding day. He said, I don't want to have to do that, asking me a million questions. He said, just come into the office and experience it for yourself. So I'm like, oh, okay. And so that's what we do. We go into our clients and we spend time there. So some of our staff go in for 2 days a week for Misguided, and they love it. They love spending the time with the team. They get to see the real behind the scenes of it all, which is really nice. So I think the onboarding is important to ask as many questions as possible, but often some of the answers get forgotten. You find yourself re-asking them, oh, when is your peak period, and what happens in winter? Do you sell much in winter, or whatever it is? That's an example, by the way. But I think it's important to get your staff into their office, work, so doing the job still as they're doing, but just sat amongst the people in the team, and that's where you build the relationships long term as well, because they love to see you around and they love to see you coming in and add value in some way.
I think that's one key lesson that I talk about when I work with agencies. There's a lot of agencies, when they're measuring efficiency, decide that sending people to working other people's offices is an inefficient use of time. You've got staff traveling for hours sometimes to an office. And when the efficiency police take over, you lose so much. One of my key bits of advice is you have to go there. So every company will give you the bullshit handbook. This is what we do. Here's our values. It's only when you're in the office, when you're sat talking to someone while you're making a brew, and they tell you what it's really like there. They give you it warts and all that. You find out so much more there. And that's one of my key bits of advice. So the thing I worked with Tom on, I call it the AAA program. Which is why the hashtag's AAA. And I work with agencies, helping them sort out that strategic part of working with their business. It's a product that I sell. I'm not trying to sell it to anyone in a tough sell, but what we look at is how to set up working with a client better, so that you ask the right questions and get the right information. And you do the right things, like go into the office and ask those questions. And how do you capture that information, and how do you turn it into something you can use as an agency to improve what you do for clients? So that's something that I've done. We worked with Tom on it, and it was great fun. And hopefully it's helping them do bigger and better stuff. But what I want to do is get into some of the questions in a little bit of a quick fire way. So I'm going to start at the bottom. There's a question from Pordy, which kind of follows on from this, is about that client agency fit. So the question from Pordy is, have you ever had to drop a big client due to a bad fit with your agency? And that's a lovely bow tie, Pordy, as well, that you're wearing on that picture. So let's go to you, Carrie, first. I know you're fairly new, but maybe even if it happened previously, what's the process there?
Yeah, 100%. So we haven't dropped any. We just haven't given the time of day. So we've had quite a lot of big brands come to us. and new business leads, and they said, this is what we want that as a minimum, this is how it will go, this is the person, they basically lay the law from the straight. And we just kind of, firstly, I just basically messaged my co-founder. I said, they're going to make our lives hell. They're literally going to make our lives hell. I ain't ready for that right now. Maybe when I've got like 100 staff to be able to deal with it, but I can't deal with it at this moment in time. So we just was like, sorry, we're extremely busy right now. We can't take this on. We wish you the best. We recommended who to go to. And hopefully they'll see that as like we helped them out. But there is a lot of times I think it's important to turn bad fit clients down. I think it takes so much of your time. I have actually worked with not a big client, but a small client that wanted the world. And we had to turn them down. Well, we worked with them. We worked them for about 3 months. And I was like, I'm giving you the results that I would give, a multi-million-pound business. And it was too much for us for a startup company. So I think it's important to turn them down or say no sometimes, 100%. Yeah.
And Tom?
Yeah, definitely the same. It's interesting you mentioned the efficiency police there, because
that's your job.
I was about to say it's my alternative job title. Yeah, we learned a lot from tracking our time, and that's a big tip that I'd give to any agency, is to understand how much time you're putting into any campaign, and what the value is for you, because it's sometimes forgotten that it's a two-way street. Agencies want to do the best possible thing for their clients, but it has to come back in terms of the collaboration and also understanding. And if you're massively over-servicing a client, or they're too demanding, and they want a meeting every week and they want a phone call every 10 minutes, that has to be paid for that time. And if not, you're not going to run a very slick operation. And we've had to speak to clients about increasing their fees, and we've had to say it's not a good fit based on that, because we've got an ideal client in mind, and we've got to cover ourselves as best as we can, as well as doing well for the client.
Okay, look, we've got 6 minutes left, and I want to try and sort of rattle through as many of these questions as we can. So let's aim for short, sharp answers, which I know is and short, sharp questions as well. That might be an easier way to do it. So a question from Suzanne in Northern Ireland is, any tips on building an agency in a non-traditional location? Sheffield, Newcastle, it's not Leeds, it's not London, it's not Manchester. Any tips there?
Act like the big boys. It doesn't matter where you are. I was in Sheffield, small city, nothing really going on in Sheffield. To act like the big boys and you'll get the big boys. That's how it is. Location does not matter. My old agency that was 250 staff big, we was based in Leeds, and we didn't have one client in Leeds. There was all international, national, wherever. So location does not matter at all. I think if you act like you're big, then you get it. And you can dominate your area just by doing that. So
great stuff. Tom, anything to add?
Exactly the same. Yeah, I think it doesn't matter at all. We started the business with no clients in the Northeast, and they were all over the UK. I think a common mistake that businesses and agencies make is we have to be in London and we have to have some presence wherever. But if you think about the cost base and things that come with that, you're gonna be struggling if you do want to open an office just for the sake of being there. It makes absolutely no difference to us in Newcastle, and most of the clients like coming up for a night out anyway because it's got that reputation. So it can work in your favour as well.
Brilliant. So a question from Michael, a fairly recent question that's just come in. Any advice on delegating exciting projects to your team, especially when the client has bought into you? So agencies are often built in the image of the founders. Carrie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll try to be really short. Hire people with personality like yours, but bring a skill set that you can't do. That's my answer. Good
God, there's more Carrie Roses. Right. I'm not coming to your office. Right, okay. Question from. I'm just rolling back up. Sorry. Right. What advice? We've talked about what advice do you have, but what 3 things would you tell agency owners? We'll go to Tom first. Any 3 bits of advice?
Yeah. So I've touched on one of these, which is understanding your time that you're spending. Every agency's got a day rate and an hourly rate, but literally the minute that you start overstepping that and you spend longer on it, on any piece of work or project, you're starting to lose out. So I think understand your actual hourly rate versus what you're saying you're charging, because those things can be very different. That would be my first point, and obviously more operational from me, so not as exciting. Knowing your ideal client is something I've touched on as well. So, as I said at the start, we specialize in automotive finance and e-commerce retail for very specific reasons. We know we can get the best results there. From a sales point of view, there's more than enough business for agencies, and more than enough businesses in those spaces that you can go after. So know your expertise and actually, build up case studies in those areas, because every client wants to know their industry. And that's always a factor in the pitch as well, or, a tick box that most tend to have is that you've got experience in their field. So that would be another one. And then finally, which is something the three of us in terms of the Evolve directors have learned, is to work on the business and not in it. So that question you had there about delegating was probably the biggest thing I've struggled with, is, starting off as head of SEO, being very client focused, very client central, to now the role I'm in. It's been very hard to step back. But until we did that, the three of us, we weren't able to work on the business as well, and things were getting missed. And we were just at client meetings all the time. We used to do every single sales pitch, and it just doesn't help in the long term. So hire the right people and let them, as Carrie says there, get talented people and let them run the show, not you. You should be behind the scenes working on the business itself.
Cool. Carrie, any tips for other agency owners?
Sure. So I guess following on from that, own nothing. So if you feel like you're owning an account and you're running, I don't know, your biggest one, you've got a problem. So you shouldn't be owning anything. And then you should be focused on people that can do the things that you can't. So a lot of agency owners that I've spoke to are like, Carrie, I'm not like you though. I'm not very confident on social media, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, I'm not telling you to do that. I need you to focus on what you're awesome at. If you're awesome at if you're the best PPC person in the world, but you own a business, then you hire someone to run the business instead. So I think you all need to focus. I think Gymshark owner did it. So Gymshark owner realized after like 2 years or so, he wouldn't make a good CEO. So he hired a CEO, and he continued to do the things that he was best at, and that was marketing. So I think you need to focus on what you're awesome at and what you enjoy, instead of just focusing on, what is everybody else doing. But also, one tip that I'd like to share, I guess, is look outside of your bubble. So we all live in this SEO bubble right now, and everybody's kind of like debating, copying each other, whatever it is. And I think the best thing that I did is woke up and realized there's so many other industries that we can learn from, whether that's kind of creative, advertising, you name it. And I look at them and how they've grown agencies, how they've grown team service areas, and take inspiration with ideas and things like that outside of the SEO bubble, which has always helped.
Great stuff. So before I go to the two last questions, I just want to tell you a couple of things, because I know some people might have to clock off at 3 o'clock. We've got a second episode of this coming on Monday, the 7th of September. That's midday till 1 o'clock, featuring Stacey McNaught and Paddy Moogan. Stacey's from McNaught Digital. Paddy is from Era. We're going to similar sort of discussion. We'll see where we go with that one. So please do sign up for that. You'll need to sign up again to get a ticket and a link, but I'll email you out with details of that. Also, want to say, if anybody wants to know a little bit more about the AAA program that I run, that I did with Evolved, there's a link on screen. Eximomarketingstrategy.com is my website. It's agency-growth-strategy. Or just send me a message. You'll find me at Andi Jarvis, and I can talk to you about that. And do keep an eye on your email for the research questions coming out about things that go wrong. And up with two quick questions to you both. One question for Carrie and one question for Tom. So the one for Carrie is just a quick one from Ricky Neal, which is, what was the magic in the Misguided pitch? Can you give us kind of like a 20-second, why did you think you won that?
I acted like the people at Misguided. So I read the room and I could see their personality, their enthusiasm. And every single time I've left a pitch, they've said, "You're enthusiastic as hell, aren't you?" And I was like, yeah. And I think that's what's made me win. I kind of copied their enthusiasm. Even if it's like gone into a serious pitch, I've gone on the same level as them. So I think it's important to read the room, but the enthusiasm sells every time.
Perfect. Thank you. And last one, Tom, for you, any advice on building a 12-month business plan? This is a question from Joe. I'm in year 2.5. I want to be able to think strategically about what we need moving forward. I would say focus on your objectives first, get that in place, and then kind of work backwards from there. But Tom, what about you? Any thoughts?
No, I was going to say exactly the same thing. It is a case of working backwards because, obviously the training's helped. But yeah, the thing is to focus on where you want to be and what you're going to need to take the steps to get there. That's what we did. We went further than 1 year because it's sometimes quite hard to just visualize 12 months with how much goes on, especially these next 12 months. But work backwards from where you want to get to. I'm not an expert on business plans, but we've done a lot of work and got some external help as well. That's another thing. There's a lot of people out there that have grown agencies much better than we have, or to the sizes that we're currently working in. So don't be afraid to get advice because people have been there, done that, and bought and sold the t-shirt as well.
Brilliant. Listen, Joe, if you want to shoot any of us a message, you'll obviously find us all on Twitter. Carrie and Tom are both tagged in tweets that I've sent out. I'm at Andi Jarvis. Oh, it's backwards. It's over here somewhere. Anyway, read that. And you'll see where I am. Send us a message and I can connect you. We can provide a little bit more help that way. We're out of time. So thank you very much for coming along, for giving us an hour, for listening, for contributing, for asking questions. Please do come back on Monday, the 7th of September. We've got Stacey and Paddy. And keep an eye on your emails. I'll send you more details about everything else that's going on. Carrie, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for showing us into your kitchen. Tom, thank you for showing us your chimney breast as well. It's been lovely. And one last thing, behind the scenes, you can't see him. There's a guy called Aaron Abernethy from Inside Voice. He manages all the technical production for me on podcasts, on live streams and stuff like that. If you are thinking about doing that, shoot me a message and I'll get you in touch with Aaron. It's brilliant. Thank you. So I'll see you all again in a couple of weeks. Carrie, Tom, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.